So we're on for day two while I adjust my little mic here, um, which I think I broke actually. It's never a good thing. But we're on for day two of the actually Iwalola, which means creativity. Um, so we're on for day two. Day two, we will be doing the exterior. And I'm just going to quickly, while I adjust my mic that fell off, I apologize. Um, there we go. I'm just going to quickly review a couple of things about the prepping that I realized yesterday that I may have skipped over. Arnetta, how you doing tonight? So tonight it should be pretty. I always say it's going to be quick, and then it's never quick. We're here like 3 hours later, still working on the bag. But um, tonight I'm just going to review something that I realized as I was looking at the video from yesterday and rethinking, thinking about what I discussed, that there are some things that I need to probably go back and go over because they are in the directions. And I do believe that it is critical um, to just explain why something is done. So then, going forward, why the directions say to do it a certain way. And if you want to apply it to another project, you can do that as well. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Catherine. I'm the owner, founder, and curator of Sew Your Bag. For me, curating is the most fun part of what I do. So, bringing the material together and organize it in such a way that you can actually create a project, for me, is the most fun, right? So, picking out the material, the zipper, the interfacing, the main fabric, and things like that is really a lot of fun. So, um, that's who I am. And so if you have any questions, please feel free. You can always pop in, ask a question. I keep an eye on the comments just so that you all know we are broadcasting to Facebook and Instagram. I'm sorry, Facebook, sorry, and YouTube. And from time to time, I will, one, pop some of the comments up on the screen because they're two separate environments. And so the people in Facebook cannot necessarily see the question I'm answering for the people on YouTube and vice versa. Also, if you want me to know who you are, please uh, accept StreamYard. So apply StreamYard so I can see your name pop up from wherever environment you're in. Even if it's a business name, I can see that come across as well. Um, and then lastly, just sit back, relax. If you're sewing another project with me and you just want the sound of somebody sewing with you in the background, that's totally fine as well. So Annetta, you're sitting there drinking. Um, I know it sounds bad, but you're drinking a cup of tea while you watch me. Thank you. Could you have a sip for me? I'm actually feeling a little hot under these lights, but I realize it is a little bit probably of something I'm coming down with due to the weather change. So I think, Arnett, if I remember, you're in DC, correct? You're in Washington or the area of DC, if I remember correctly. So I think we're sort of having the same kind of some weather. So I'm hoping that it's a good tea. It's an herbal blend, but that's okay if it's, red rose, Lipton, one of those as well. That's good as well. So I'm going to show you the actual bag. And the other thing I want to mention to you is that I do flip back and forth with cameras. So right now you're seeing me and you will see me at the beginning and you will see me come back at the end. But throughout the sew along, it's more a close up of what I'm doing either on the cutting mat or at the sewing machine. So they will be flipping back and forth. So if that's anything that is concerning to anybody, please look away. Please look away and, just listen in and then come back and look, because I know flipping of camera sometimes can be a little bit much for people. So yeah, Arnetta in DC. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. It only took me, what, 2.5 years? Um, but I remember DC. Um, so let's take a look at the bag itself. And I'll talk about the exterior. Like I said, I just want to review something on prep. So if anybody was looking through the directions and they were wondering why I did something and they just followed along, at least you'll understand why I did it. So let's go to the cutting mat. So this is the bag. This is the bag that I will be sewing. I yesterday I did the prep like I mentioned before. The exterior is fabric. So if you want to use your quilting cotton and things like that, you can use that for the exterior. Once again, I'm just going to repeat something that I repeated yesterday. The whole purpose of this bag, along with teaching you skills, is also to show you that you can use the minimum amount of material and come up with a very nice bag. Also, the materials that you use are readily available to you. So I know sometimes when you're looking at a pattern, there are things and you're a little overwhelmed about what's in there and whether you have the right materials or not. This bag you can make the vinyl I actually purchased from Joanne Fabric. And I mentioned when using fine vinyl, you should either use a Teflon foot, which I have on my machine, or you can use a walking foot as well. To me, the one drawback of the walking foot is the fact that you only have a fixed distance. So if you need to get close to something, the foot can interfere with you being able to do that. Things like top stitching, for example. So this is going to, I'm not going to use my walking foot, but you can use a walking foot. All right. So cotton on the outside, I accent with cotton here. I'm using vinyl. It's about a yard of fabric for the exterior fabric. If you're using directional fabric, please make sure, and when I show you my piece, I'll show you, please make sure on the back side you mark where the top is so you don't end up sewing something in upside down. For the vinyl, the exterior and the bottom of the bag here, I did use some Decoville Heavy along with the regular interface, and that's really what I want to talk to you about a little bit. So yesterday when I was going over the interfacing of the pieces, and this is going to be true for whether it's the cotton exterior or it's actually the side pieces in the bottom, um, I showed you how to interface the piece with DHL 2010 Heavy. And I did mention that it is a little bit stiffer than the actual SF 101. So it's maybe like two of them, but it has an oak tag or cardboard type of feel. So in mentioning that to you, I showed you how to interface it. I also said, use some steam. I explained the difference between pressing and ironing. What I want to explain to you today, which is in the directions, and I'm just going to grab my bottom piece here, is when I interface it, and this is where I wanted to correct it in case anybody got confused. This is just a scrap piece of Decoville Heavy. So the way that the bag of the body is made stiffer or firmer is by using Decoville Heavy in combination with the DLH 2010 Heavy. What I do when I interface is I will take, and this is in the directions, the dimensions for the Decoville Heavy, is I will take Decoville Heavy, I will fuse that first to my cotton fabric or my vinyl fabric, which is what I did. And then what I do is I take a piece of the actual Decoville Heavy, I mean, DHL 2010. So I take a piece of this and then I will lay it once this is fused down. And I'm not going to do it, but I just wanted to explain it. I will then take a piece of the heavy interface. In your case, it may be 2 layers of SF101, or if you have something comparable to this, heavy, you do that. I will then fuse this on top of it. So what I try to do when I'm fusing different thicknesses of interface is I try to go from from the heaviest to the lightest. So if I was using, for example, Decoville Light and foam, I would do Decoville Light, foam, and then put this right on top of it and fuse it down. When you're fusing this last part down, and this is in the directions as well, I tell you to take the edge of your iron. So take the edge of your iron here, hold it at an angle, and push that interface right against that edge. What that does is it eliminates air pocket right in here, and it also makes sure you get a smooth finish. So that's also one of the reasons I do not pre-cut my interface. I block fuse because then I'm able to do that. If you do this and you actually cut the interfacing the same size as this, when you stick that iron right there to fuse it, real close there and out, you're losing some of your interfacing and your interfacing is going in. So if that doesn't bother you, you can pre-cut the interface and do it that way. But I didn't mention this to you yesterday, and I want to make sure I mention it today. I have my cotton or my vinyl. I then do my Decoville Heavy. The Decoville Heavy is cut shorter than the piece, so it should be out of the seams. And then I take my interface, I lay it on top, and then I fuse it down all the way around. So make sure that this is fused very well. So you can use steam to fuse it. The directions normally say for Decoville heavy and light, it normally says let it cool because you want it to cool down a little bit and then put the other piece on. So that was the piece that I wanted to clarify today for you because I said it was in the directions and I didn't think that I covered it enough yesterday. Okay. So for anybody who's following along with me, there are going up to page 7 of the pattern. I talk about interfacing and fusing the interface. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the straps. But before we get to talking about the straps, I just want to make sure I cover with you all of the pieces that I'm going to be going over today in case you want to gather those pieces and sew along with me. So you will need 2 pieces of your cotton fabric. This should be the exterior of your bag, front and back. You will need the bottom and you will need 2 side pieces. You will also need your zipper. I'm sorry, you don't need your zipper. I'm sorry. You will also need your purse feet. So I'm using 5 purse feet. We'll talk about them because depending on where you purchase them from, they could look a little bit different. Also, depending on where you purchase them from, you may only get 4 and you can use 4. So you can use 4, anywhere from 4 to 6. I'm using a pack of 5. So I will talk about the 5. When I start installing it, I'll explain to you that you can leave out the middle one if you only get 4. Okay. You will also need your top of your strap. So this is the accent piece of your strap. And you will actually need your strap piece. And I actually have 2 pieces of strapping right here. I did interface the cotton on the strap. So just so that you're aware, I did interface this. And the reason that I did is to give it some stiffness and stability. When you're sewing, depending on the presser foot and how tightly down your presser foot is, it can skew your material. So the interface actually helps it to stay totally flat and you're not buckling. I did not interface this particular this vinyl, the marine vinyl, and that's because I felt it was thick enough to use, and you didn't really have to. You can if you want to. All right, if you want to, you can, and you can also put, if you want to, a piece of interfacing, on it, a piece of Decoville heavy straight down the middle. There's so many things you can do if you want to add extra stability. I just think on a domestic sewing machine, sometimes that extra thickness can be problematic, especially when you're first starting to learn to sew. You're going to need a screwdriver. So I have my little handy dandy screwdriver here. And I do have, this isn't all that came with my sewing machine, but something to punch the holes for your purse feet. And then you can have optional as well, some duct tape or some Gorilla Tape. I use Gorilla Tape from Home Depot. Okay, so let's talk about the straps. So I'll start first with the vinyl, and I'm just going to keep myself honest because I want to make sure that if anybody's following along with me in the directions, I'm not telling you something that's different because I've gotten feedback that sometimes I do things and people don't know where I am. So this is the vinyl, and this is going to be the bottom of the strap. I have drawn a line straight down the middle here on the vinyl, and that line that I've drawn straight down the middle is just a center line. So it's a center line. I did do it in ink. You can do it in something that's removable if you want, but nobody's going to see it. So I did do it in ink. The other thing I'm going to do is on the ends, I'm going to draw another line on either side, a 1/2 inch up, because I want to fold these up. And yesterday I talked about having a finished edge, and I want to fold those up so that I get a finished edge. So I'm going to draw that 1/2 inch line, and it is on either side, on either long end. So just get my ruler here. What happens when you have so many rulers, you can't find the one you need. Okay. So I'm going to just take this. I'm going to draw a line that's 1/2 inch. Now, just to let you know, if this is the first time you're with me, I draw the line. If I want a 1/2 inch fold over like this, I draw a line twice that. So it's 2 times I want a 1/4 inch fold over, I double it, and that's where I draw the line. So if it's a 1/4 inch, twice a 1/4 inch is a 1/2 inch. And I draw the line there. And then that way I can fold this bottom to that line. I know some patterns will say, draw a 1/4 inch line and then fold on the 1/4 inch line. I don't do that because I find for me, it's harder. And it is a lot easier if you fold to a line than trying to figure out where that line is at the bottom that you need to fold. So I'm going to do the same on this side. And let me see if I can find my actual smaller ruler. And I can't, so it's okay. We'll just do it this way. And I'm going to draw another 1/2 inch line. So I'm just matching the 1/2 inch mark on my cutting mat to do this. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to do the same thing to the other strap piece as well, because I'll need to do the same for that one as well. So I'm going to first fold that over. And then I'm going to use a piece of double-sided tape. Now, I normally have 2 widths. And if I have to recommend to you the different widths, I would say get the 1/4 inch and an 1/8 inch width. Those are the 2 widths I think you should have on hand. And that's because the 1/8 inch is very good because you get to put the tape right on the edge, fold it in, it comes to about here. And then when you fold this in and you're sewing, it's out of your seam allowance. So you're not, people, you may see in different groups where they talk about, oh, I got my machine, the double-sided tape gummed up my machine. Try to find a tape and try to keep that tape out of the seam allowance, and then you won't have that happen. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll take one of my straps. I'm going to use, with saying all of that, I'm going to use my 1/4 inch tape at the bottom. And that's because when I'm sewing it, I'm not going to sew that much of it. And so I'm just going to use the straight 1/4 inch tape. But normally, like I said, have on hand the 1/8 inch. I like using the 1/8 inch when I'm doing zippers. So I'm going to take a piece of tape and I'm going to put it along the bottom edge. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side as well. So I'm going to do all of these, both of these straps. All right. And then once I've done that, I'm going to do the same here. And then I will run a piece of double-sided tape. And you can do it 2 different ways, right? You can run it down each edge or you can run it down the middle. It's totally up to you. I try to run, especially this 1/4 inch one, I try to run the tape in such a way that I'm not interfering, like I said, with my stitch line. So I peel the backing off here, and then I'm going to fold this till it meets my drawn line right there. So I'm hoping the light is not too bright, but I draw it there, and then I press it down. You can use a poly roller. Some people also use a wallpaper roller, but I just fold it down, and that's going to be a 1/4 inch. I'm going to do the same on the other side. And I'm going to fold it down to the line for the 1/4 inch on this side. Now, once I've done that, I'll show you 2 different ways that I just talked about. You can take your double-sided tape. You can start on this side, on the edge, and run it the full length. And for the vinyl, you will need something. So some people, I think, use glue. It depends on your vinyl. You'll start to learn what sticks and what doesn't stick. So I rolled it down on one side, but then I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to take it and I'm going to put the tape to the left, or actually to the right of the line that I drew down the center on the other side. And that's just to show you 2 different ways, right? So, and I'm showing it to you on the same strap. So you can take the tape and put a piece on either side of your center line, or you can take a piece of tape and put it on the edges, on the outside edges, and then fold it in. So I'm just showing you 2 different ways, whichever way you decide to use. This strap is pretty thick, so it's totally fine. It's up to you and what's most comfortable to you. I'm going to peel off the backing here. Because this tape sits over on the other side of my line, I can see my line. I'm then going to fold this into the center. Now, when you're folding this into the center, press firmly on it so that it sticks. You may have to come back as you're waiting. You may have to come back and use some clips, but at least for the most part, it holds it in there. Now, what I will also say to you is that as you're doing this and you're folding it over and you're pressing it down, when you fold the other side, you may notice that it's a little bit off, and that's okay. Just make them meet. So if you don't get this exactly on the line, don't worry about it. When you fold the other side in, make sure you meet this line, and it's fine. So every now and then I'll do this, and this side's a little bit shorter, but I just pull that right over here, make sure they meet. It gets hidden when you put the top piece on. So that's one half. I'm going to peel the center one. So if you did it in the center, you'd peel off that center one. And then you would fold the edge without the tape into the middle. So I'm going to start at one end here, fold it into the middle. I am going to add a clip just to hold it right there in place while I do this. And that's because there's no tape on this side here. I didn't put any tape on the fold over part. So that's why I put a clip. Okay, so now we're going to fold this in, make this meet in the middle. If you're somebody who does a vinyl strap or does any kind of strapping where you do, it's actually wider, it's 4 times the width, and then you do a double fold like that, and that is your strap. Normally you would leave a little bit scant, like 1/8 of an inch right there, gap in the middle. And I call that like breathing room, so that when you fold it over, the fabric or the material is not folding over on itself. In this case, we want it right next to each other, so we're not leaving any space for this. So I'm just going to do that all the way down. And once I'm done doing this, I will do the same for the other strap as well. Okay. So my double-sided tape is a little bit cold, so I'm just going to stick some clips in here. And that's totally fine. Right. So this is also good if you don't have double-sided tape. You can do this, and then you can just simply add clips. What I do is I try to add clips alternatingly. So I'll add one on this side, and then I'll add one on the opposite side, like that. And then when I add the next one, I add it to the other side. So I alternate my clips. I don't put them all on the one side, and I do space them out. So you would make sure that they're all spaced out nicely so that you're not, if they're too close together as you're sewing, it's very frustrating to keep having to pull clips out. Also, you also don't want to break your rhythm as you're sewing. So the further apart they are, the easier it is to keep that rhythm and get very nice top stitching. And I'm going to add another clip here. And I'm going to open this up a little later because I'm going to have to tuck the top piece in there, but just for right now. And I am going to add a couple of clips. I use, just so that in case anybody wants to know, I actually use a scrapbooking tape because it has a low tack. If you want, you can use leather tape. It's a lot stickier, but once again, then you have to really make sure that you keep it out of the path of your needle when you sew, so that you're not spending a lot of time cleaning up your needle from the sticky glue that's on the tape. So, and since this is, like I said, one of those projects that I wanted to show you can use material that's readily available to you, I would say look in Joann's. They have a great scrapbooking section. I don't get the tape from there, but they have a really good scrapbooking. You can probably find tape there. Okay. So that's one strap done, completed. I'm going to do the same thing on the other strap. So now that we've seen how it's done, I'm going to peel off that end. I'm going to peel off the other end, and then I'm going to fold everything to the middle. So I'm going to fold this to the line to get your 1/4 of an inch fold over. And then I'm going to do this. And then I'll add the other pieces of tape. I just don't want the tape to really overlap that much. So I'm just doing the bottom here. I don't know what I'm doing. And I do like doing it on the edge. So I will do this one on the edge because I do like putting, I don't know why, but I put the tape on the edge. They do sell, by the way, they do sell tape that's a 1/2 inch. So if you got a 1/2 inch tape, you could just run it straight down the middle over that line that you drew. Because the tape is clear, you'd be able to see the line even after you remove the top. But I don't really feel that for me, a 1/2 inch is something that I would use frequently. So I just prefer to use the 1/4 of an inch and the 1/8 of an inch because I know that I will use them up. Right, I will actually use up the material. Okay. And I'm just doing this other side here. When you're laying it down, try to stay away from the edge there because you don't want any glue sticking over the edge or tape sticking over the edge. So we're just going to do that. Okay. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to start with one side. I'm going to peel the backing off, fold it to the middle. Same thing that I did before. So it's pretty much just rinse and repeat. And I just want to make sure that my tape is really sticking down there. And then I'm just going to simply peel this backing off. Have my clips ready. And then I'm just going to fold this. Make sure that it aligns right here with the bottom. When I lay the cotton piece on it, I am going to open that up just a little bit, just to make sure that I can tuck it in there. And then I just simply go all the way down. Like I said, you can use there's something called a poly roller. To me, it looks like a roller that you use for wallpapering. But I'm sure that it's a little bit more than that, but that's what it looks like to me. Okay. And if you decide that you wanted to interface, make sure that your interfacing is adhered firmly to the vinyl, um, and that it has a chance to cool. Check all your edges. And the reason I say that is because as you do the folding, like I'm doing, if it's not adhered completely, you probably won't notice it till you start folding, and then you'll see it start to lift. So just make sure that you allow it to cool and all that good stuff, and then you can do this folding with it. And the interfacing will just make it a little bit stiffer. If I am working with a piece of vinyl that I don't know, and we talked yesterday about the stretch, the fact that vinyl does have a stretch like fabric. And if I am working with a piece of vinyl and I see that it does have a stretch, even if I do not interface it, I will take a piece of either a scrap piece of vinyl, and it could be scrap pieces, right? So you could take two pieces and just zigzag stitch them together, or scraps of my waterproof canvas, and I will lay it right down the middle here. And that also helps to eliminate the stretch because if you try to pull the vinyl with that in there, it won't move. And that's because it can't stretch. It can't stretch because the waterproof canvas that you put inside of it doesn't stretch. So I save my waterproof canvas pieces, and you can cut them into like strips of like 3/4 of an inch, which is good for 1/2 inch straps. Or um, if you're doing a 1/2 inch strap, you can make it like 3/8 strips and just lay it right down the middle of the vinyl, and it helps. And I just lay it right in there. I use a piece of double-sided tape, the 1/16 inch double-sided tape on the back of the waterproof canvas, and I just stick it right down the middle. Okay, so that's my second strap. So now I have these two straps all done. The next thing I need to do is do something similar for my fabric straps. So these are the fabric straps. Good evening, Nancy. How are you? The weather get better in Florida? So for the fabric straps, what I did is I drew a line down the middle of these as well. The difference with these is that I can iron them. So I will iron the ends in towards the middle. I have, like I mentioned earlier, I have interfaced these. My straps are a little bit longer than the measurement, so I'm going to cut them, but um, all I'm doing is folding. I don't know if you can see that. There is trying to show you the line. See that line right there going down the middle? I'm just folding this to that line on one side, and I will iron it. I will do the same on the other side and iron it as well. Now, I'm not worried about this edge. Remember on the vinyl, I folded it over on the edge, and I said to you, I want to get a finished edge over here, so I folded it. I'm not doing that with this because I'm going to tuck this between the vinyl, so you're not going to see the raw edge. Oh, that's okay. Sunny but chilly. Yeah, that's how kind of was here. It's a little overcast. Um, but chilly's good. You can just put on a very light jacket. And sunny's good too. At least it's not raining. So that's all I'm doing is I'm just folding this right to the middle and doing this. Okay. And then what I will do is once I get all the way to the end, I will fold the other side in. So yes, this is a little bit tedious, especially if you have a long strap. Yes, you can use double-sided tape for this if you want. I just like ironing the cotton because I find that I get a crisper edge when I iron it than if I fold it, because then when I fold it, I still have to press it. So you can do that. I also know that there are some people who use like Elmer's glue, and they'll put a bead of Elmer's glue along the edge and then they will iron it because ironing will set the glue. So there's so many different ways to do this. And I did say I like doing things without tools because if I know how to do them without tools, if I can't put my hand on that tool, um, then I can still get the job done. I'm not frustrated. So now I'm going to take this edge here and I'm going to fold it in to match the other edge. And like I mentioned, I don't care about the raw edges. I'm just, excuse me, going to fold that in and meet them in the middle. So it actually goes pretty quick. Just watch your fingertips because it does get hot, especially if you're going over the place that you already went over. It is the ironing board or mat is hot, so just be careful with your little fingertips. I have done this and melted nail polish because my fingernails are under there, so I have done it where the nail polish has melted. It's gotten so hot, so just be very careful. All right, so we have one almost done, and then we'll do the other one. Now this I'm not worried about. When I talked about pressing and ironing, this I'm not worried about ironing, not pressing, because I have that interface on there, so I'm not worried that I'm going to distort it. It's actually keeping it nice and firm. Okay. And then once I've done that, not really worrying if it stays very well, I just need it kind of sort of good. because when I put the double-sided tape on, it will then sit. So I'm just going to iron it now from the right side. And yes, you can use steam, and you should use steam. And make sure you fold that, you keep the fold in there. So just to show you, before I do the next one, just to show you how it's going to look, I will put together one and then I will go and finish the other one as well. But let me show you what it looks like. So now I have these two pieces. One piece will be longer than the other, just so that you know, and that is intentional. So the cotton piece is longer than the vinyl piece. So I can show you that. See, it's longer here and here. It's longer. So that was done intentionally, and that's because I want to be able to tuck it under. No rain. Good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my double-sided tape onto the actual vinyl. And I just think it sticks better. So I'm going to start at a little bit shy of the end here, about 1/4 inch. And I'm going to lay it right over the seam, the center seam of my vinyl. I would recommend you use a 1/4 inch double-sided tape here, not a 1/16 of an inch. So, but if a 1/16 of an inch is all you have, use what you have. Okay, so I'm going to do that all the way down and stop within about 1/4 inch from the end. You can go to the end, but I stop at 1/4 inch and press that down. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cotton, and mine is really longer because I know for a fact I cut it long. So let me just cut it off so it's shorter. I just need to cut it to the measurement. Okay. The next thing you're going to do is I'm going to start at one end. I'm going to remove my clips. I'm going to take this, open up that seam that's right there, and I'm going to tuck it in there. But before I do that, I'm going to peel off this backing. So I would suggest don't peel it all off at one time. Just peel it in phases. I peeled it off. I'm going to take this and I'm going to stick it right in there. And you should stick it in there about 1/4 inch. You're going to find as you sew this, believe it or not, you're probably going to readjust it and it's going to be a little bit more at the end, but that's okay. And then I'm going to stick it in 1/4 inch. Make sure it's centered. And I'll try to show you that. See how it looks in that hole? And then I'm just going to press it with my fingers, just like that. So now it looks like a finished strap because this is finished and that's finished. I'm then going to add the clip. Now what you can do is take this piece and just lay it right on top of that double-sided tape. All the way down, and you can peel back the rest of it. So I normally say just do it in phases with the double-sided tape because there's nothing worse than it doubling up on itself. And then you're struggling with unsticking it because it's stuck to itself. Okay, so all I'm doing is adjusting my clips a little bit. There we go. Okay, and then we get to the end. So whereas before it was popping up, you can see now that the material actually helps to hold that vinyl in place. So I'm just going to add my clips on top of the fabric. And you will see at the end here also, I have a little bit of extra. So not to worry. I'm just going to snip it and make sure I try to give it at least like anywhere between 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. The more you give it, the better, because chances are it won't slip out. And then you're going to open this up again, just like that. And you're going to tuck this in to that opening. And about 1/4 inch or however much you did. And then when you lay it flat, you then add your clip. So that's what your strap is going to look like when you're done. All right, so that's the strap. So now that I've shown you that, I'm just going to construct the next one, not really explain so much, but you can see what I did. And I'm going to construct the next one so that we have two straps. So is everybody ready for the holiday? Tomorrow's my last day of work before the new year. Um, so I'm excited for that. So in Okay, so I will tell you this, and I should have mentioned this. On um, the back of the fabric piece, I used a friction pen. So if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's a heat erasable pen, and I drew the line. So what I'm having is in some places the line goes away because as the heat, the steam from the iron comes across, it will disappear. So I'm gonna do it from this side so I could see it and try to stay ahead of it. And then the other thing is when you put it on the ironing board, because the ironing board is hot, as you readjust it, it disappears because it gets the heat from underneath. Okay, so that's one half. Let's do the other half. And these straps, by the way, you can adjust. So I would say make it longer, make the strap a little bit longer, and then you can always cut it down for your own personal use. The dimensions that I gave in the pattern is because I'm a little bit bigger. um, so I'm not a little woman. I'm little in stature. So I am a shorter woman, but I am bigger. I have breadth. And also, if I put it over my coat, I need that extra drop over a winter coat. So I did make it for that. If anybody wants to know, I'm 5'1". So that's my height. So the strap was made for somebody 5'1". If you're doing this for somebody taller, you may want to make the strap also a little bit longer for somebody taller so that the bag falls lower down. But once again, it's customizable. You can do what you'd like with it. But most of the straps that are in the patterns that I make are either 27 or 28 inches. If it's a tote bag, 27 or 28 inches in length. Okay. So now I'm going to iron it from the right side, and then we'll put it together. Okay. I'm going to get my other strap here. Once again, lay that down over that seam. If you lay it over the seam, it's definitely out of your seam allowance when you're putting this together. It also helps to hold it down. Okay. Next step is we're going to tuck in our end here to the end here. So we're going to open that up. We're going to tuck it in there. Remove your double-sided tape so you have something for your material to stick onto. And like I said, I pull it a little bit first, and then when I'm ready to do the rest, I will pull the rest of it. And honestly, eyeball this down the middle. If you're somebody who you need to make sure that it's exactly right, you can definitely measure on either side. So you can get a ruler and measure that this side and this side are the same width. I don't do that. I eyeball it, and you can definitely see if it's off, right? So if it's a lot off, you'll see it. You're not going to see it if it's, you know, a 16th of an inch off. And you can reposition this. This is also, I do recommend if you get the scrapbooking tape or use a scrapbooking tape, get the one that's repositionable. That's the one that I use. I haven't tried the permanent one, and I think it's because I'm scared. I'm scared that if I use the permanent one, it rips the fabric of the material I'm using. So the repositional one is perfect. You just what enough that you need. Okay, so now we're at the other end. Over here. I'm at the other end here. I am going to trim this. Like I said, I cut mine longer. I cut mine the width of fabric. So I did cut mine longer than it's in the directions. And then I'm going to open this up. I am going to tuck that right in there, just like that. And like I said, when we stitch this, you may find that you have a little bit of stretch still in the cotton piece itself. And when you get to the opposite end, it should be very easy to just pull it out, readjust it in here, and push it back in. Okay. And if you need to, you can add the clips back to here. Remember, I said I alternate them. One thing I will say about the clips, and I'm saying this because I'm saying this for people who are beginner bag makers. That's my whole focus, is anybody who's a beginner bag maker. If you're a seasoned bag maker, you probably already know this, but this is for somebody who's a beginner. When you get these clips, there is, and I'll turn to the side, there is a flat side and there's that curved side. Make sure that the flat side is against the bed of your sewing machine. So you should be sewing with the flat side down. So when you put your clips on, make sure that the flat side is down if this is going to be the top of it. Don't do it with it this way because it's very frustrating because now you're fiddling with it. It was made flat intentionally so that it would be at the same, it would be even with your sewing bed. So sometimes you may see me do this and I'm flipping clips around. It's because I put it in upside down. So that's just something to be aware of. Okay, so now the straps are done. My end came out here. I now have two of them, or I should have two of them. And we will be on page, I did skip ahead. Let's see where we are. And for anybody who's following along, I am on page. So I'm near the bottom of page 10. So now we're going to start sewing this. So when I sew it, I am going to sew it at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So in other words, I'm going to be sewing it on the fabric, not on the vinyl. And I'm going to sew 1/8 of an inch here on the fabric. If this is the first time you're doing straps like this, or the first time you're doing straps, do it at 1/4 of an inch. It doesn't matter. I know you may think it matters. It doesn't. As you get better at this, you'll then do it at 1/8 of an inch. But for right now, do it at 1/4 of an inch if that's your comfort level. I will be doing it at 1/8 of an inch, so it'll be right along the edge. You just really want to tack this down and make sure that it's in place. When I get to the end here, I am going to pivot. So I am going to stop short right here, about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to pivot and then go across. So I'll explain it to you once, and then I'll just do it for the other one as well. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go over to our sewing machine. And we're going to sew this. Okay. I normally start, I normally start somewhere like here. So maybe about 1 inch or so up. And when I come back around, I meet it there. I find that it's easier to do that than to try to match it in the corner and make sure that it meets there. And this is too close to the end. So I start maybe about a quarter of an inch to a half an inch up. Make sure my sewing machine's on. Let's get a little extra light on the subject here. There we go. All right. So for me, 1/8 of an inch, and this is if anybody wants to give this a try if you haven't done it before. I'll show you on a regular presser foot so I don't have to zoom in here. I do have my Teflon foot on there. There is this foot here, which is 1/8 of an inch foot. It's a little slimmer than a regular presser foot. And so these are the two feet, right? One is 1/8 of an inch. Hopefully you can see that. One is 1/8 of an inch, which is this one. And this is my standard one right here, which is the one that comes with my sewing machine. You can see that's a little bit wider. For me, when I sew, I use the inside edge so that I know where the 1/8 of an inch is. So if you look at it right here along the edge, I match that with the edge of my fabric. And that's 1/8 of an inch. When the needle comes down, it gives me 1/8 of an inch. If you have a ditch foot, or like I mentioned yesterday, there are these Teflon feet that have that little blade in it. You can use that as your edge foot as well to help you with it. When you're sewing with vinyl, you do increase the length of your stitch. So I normally sew within, and especially with top stitching, but definitely with vinyl, I use a stitch length of about 4 or 4.5. You should test this out on a scrap piece of vinyl and see which one you like best, right? So try 4.5. You may have to go as high as 5. Who knows? But try and see which one you like best before you actually start on your project. So I am going to sew. I do back tack. And like I said, I'm following the inside edge here to the right for my strap. I know somebody's gonna ask me, I use a regular 10, 14, 90, 14 needle, and I use regular polyester thread. I don't use, you know, anything special on this machine. On my semi-industrial, I do use, the 30, the 50, the 70. I do use those threads, but here it's just a regular. And in this case, it's a Gutermann thread that I purchased from Joann's. So it's just a Gutermann polyester thread. So once again, when you get to about 1/8 of an inch from the edge here, let's make sure I neaten this up a little bit. You're going to stop with the needle in the down position. Let's go one more. When it's in the down position, you're going to turn your hand wheel so the needle is going up. This is very important. When it's going up, you know that it has caught your bobbin thread. You can then, with the needle still down, lift your presser foot, rotate it 90 degrees, drop your presser foot, and continue sewing across. When you get to about 1/8 of an inch, once again, rotate the wheel. Now, the reason for the rotation of the wheel is to make sure it catches that bobbin thread. If you've ever done top stitching and you end up with that little like jog that looks like this, instead of an angle, like a 45-degree angle, it's because it didn't catch the bobbin thread. So that's why you rotate it so the needle is going up. Once it's going up, you know that it caught the thread. Make sure it's in the down position, your needle, lift the presser foot and rotate. And then you should get nice square corners after that. Once again, quarter of an inch. I mean, 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And then you're just going to meet them right here. You're going to make sure that they match and back tack. Okay. All right, so then that's one strap. That's what the back looks like. That's what the front looks like. I am using a brown, so it's the same color as this little tiny sliver of a stripe there. It's like a rusty color that I'm using. So that's one strap, and we're going to do the same for the other one. Okay, so that's done. And that was both of our straps. So now we have both of those straps complete. And we're going to get ready now to construct the exterior as well as attach these straps to our bag. So you should be, if you're following along, you should be at the bottom of page 11. I'm going to skip over the prepping the zipper only because that's going to take a little bit of time. And I want to make sure that everybody understands how that's done. So for right now, I'm going to skip over that. We're going to do that when we do the lining. And I'm just trying to balance the amount of time that we're doing tonight. But if you want to read ahead, you can read ahead on that. And we will go over that tomorrow when we do the lining. So the next step is to put in our purse feet. So I'm going to set these to the side. I'm going to grab my bottom of my bag. So this is what the bottom looks like. And I'm just going to grab that and I'm going to make some marks. Oops. Okay. I'm going to make some marks on here. Now, what I've already done is I like to mark the centers. So normally what I do is I fold my edges together and then I will take a small snip on the top and the bottom. And I like to do that with all my pieces. And then I fold it lengthwise like this. And I take another snip. If you want to use a marking tool, you can use a marking tool to make the mark, if that's easier for you. I do it because it helps me line it up on my cutting surface so I can see where my center lines are. And I can make sure if I'm doing something that I'm totally center on my cutting mat. So that's the reason that I mark the centers. It also helps me when I'm putting pieces together because then I could just align at the center and work my way out. So I'm going to use, you can use a punch if you have a punch, and I do have one, but I'm going to use an awl because not everybody has a punch. I'm going to use an awl and I'm going to mark the bottoms for my purse feet. So I'm going to mark along the ends and then the other one is just in the middle, right? So if I just grab my little ruler here, I can very quickly say, this is my middle mark. This is my middle mark or my center mark, right? I can do like that. And like I said, I'm using 5 purse feet. If you're using 4, you would leave out this center one. So you wouldn't make a mark in the center. Okay. So I would make a mark like here for the center, a vertical line. Then to make the horizontal line, I would just look across here like this. And then I would get my ruler. So I'll get my bigger ruler. And I would do like this. And then I would mark the center like that. And then if you're somebody who needs to, you can always measure down and measure up to make sure that it is in the center. Okay. For the next part, I'm going to mark in from the ends. So this is where I have, make sure that your piece is square. And then you are going to measure down and put a mark at the mark. And it's actually listed in the directions where that is. So I'm just going to place a mark. And I'm going to guesstimate here for a minute. And then I'm going to put another mark. And you can see how far off I was. Okay. So I'm going to make a mark like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other corners as well. All right. So I'm going to come to the other corners. I'm going to measure like this. I know it's going to be around there. And then I'm going to measure this way. So I just need a little like bullseye. So right here is where the purse feet are going to go, where those lines cross. And then I do the same on the other side. Now, there are different types of purse feet. I use the screw-in kind. So I use the kind where you actually screw in the purse feet. If you want, there are also the ones that are pronged. So the prongs look like, I don't know, they look like fasteners, like the fasteners in the old day where they're metal on the bottom and they just open up like this and they're pronged and they normally come with a washer. So you can use those as well. So it doesn't really matter. Use whichever ones make you happy. So if those make you happy, use those. Like I said, I use the ones that screw in only because I think they look prettier and usually they're metal. So I use the metal ones. And I'm just measuring this to make sure it's right. Oh, I'm really off. Okay. All right, so that's all my marks. So then I'm going to use my awl. Remember to put my pen where I can find it. And I'm just going to poke a hole right where this crosses here. So I'm going to see if I can get it for you guys. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. I realize some things I'm perfect at and some things I'm too far away. So those are the lines. You can see them. So I'm just going to poke a hole right here. And I'm actually going to insert the purse feet. And I just push it straight through. And I'm actually going to insert the purse feet from this side here. Right? So I go back over here and I push it back in. So I just want to make it big enough to get the screw through. So let's grab those purse feet. And we're going to put them in. So I need purse feet. These are the screw-in ones. They use a regular Phillips screw driver. So those are the ones I'm going to use. And they come in different finishes too. So by the way, they come in like these happen to be gold. Some of them come in nickel or silver. And then, there's matte black. There's all different types. You don't have to put these on. They just give your bag a nice look. And this is vinyl. So, if you put it down, it's not a big deal. But if it was a cotton bag or something that you were concerned would get soiled if you put it on a wet surface, purse feet come in handy because it keeps it elevated. So I'm just going to stick that in there. Hole's not big enough, so I'm just going to try to make it just a little bit bigger. I put the screw part in first. So this is the screw part. I put that in first. And then I will turn it over to this side. and then I push down either with my fingernails like this, or you can use your awl and push it down with the oil with the awl like this. You can push it down. I then take one of the purse feet, like the top that's actually going to be showing. This has a plastic covering on it, so I leave that on until I'm done with my bag, so it helps to minimize it won't get scratched. And then I hold this with my finger and I put the screwdriver in and then I turn. So you want to hold it stationary, and I turn it as hard as I can until it stops. So you want to hold this stationary and rotate that because you don't want it turning around. So now we did that one. Let's do this one, and then I'll continue till I get all 5 of them in. Once again, if you only have 4, then only leave out the one in the middle. The other thing you can use if you want, just to be very careful with it, is there's this thing called Loctite or thread locker. You can put that on there. Be careful because it can melt or, depending on your vinyl, discolor it. So if you want to use that, I would definitely say just use a little dab of it, and it just creates a rubber coating in the threads, which helps to prevent it from becoming unscrewed. So we're going to do this. Flip it over. And then I'm going to just punch the holes for these other ones. And like I said, you can use a hole punch. You can even use, if you have the punch for your rivet setter, you have a manual punch. For the rivet setter, you can also use that as well. It looks something like, if I have one in here. So this is the rivet setting tool, and there's another piece that actually used to punch holes, and you can use that and hit it with a hammer and make a hole. Just make sure you don't make the hole too big, but that should be fine if you'd prefer to do that. Like I said, I use tools if I have to, and it makes the job quicker. So if I'm making a lot of them, then tools definitely make a difference. If I'm just making 1 or 2 of something, sometimes it takes me longer to find that tool than it does to get the job done. So it's up to you. Okay. So that's 1. Two. And then I'm just going to go over here also and grab some Gorilla tape that I can put on here when I'm done. So I'm just going to put these last 3 in. Okay. Like I said, the other ones look like paper fasteners, so you may see those being sold as well. Um, and you do have to punch holes for those. So if you think there's a shortcut, there's not. There's still a hole. It's just the way that they attach. It's different. And like I said, these are usually metal. Sometimes they're solid. These are actually hollow. Around here, I have colored ones, and the colored ones that I have are actually solid. So this hollow piece that's in here that's hollow is actually filled in. So they're actually weightier or heavier on the colored ones. Okay. So now those are all in there. I'm just going to go grab some duct tape over here. Actually, it's Gorilla tape. And that just helps them from becoming undone or screwing out, unscrewing. So Actually getting to the end of this. And I'm just going to stick a piece over each one of these screws. That's all I'm going to do. You don't have to be neat with this. Nobody's going to see this. It's on the inside of the bag. They don't have to all be the same size. Notice they're not even going in the same direction. Okay. And then I'm going to press those in place nice and firm. Make sure they don't come undone. So that's the inserting of the purse feet all done. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back out so you guys can see a little bit more as I talk. Okay. I'm frozen. Maybe refresh on your side. I haven't moved. So is my cutting mat frozen? Or is the... Sorry, I didn't see that. So I just refreshed it. Is my cutting mat frozen? Okay, it's better now. Thank you so much. Sorry, I didn't see that till I flipped back over. So all I did was insert the purse feet. Like I said, there's a little piece of plastic. I left that on. And then I added some duct tape. It's actually Gorilla Tape from Home Depot. And I like that because it's very sticky. Duct tape isn't as sticky. And then I just added that to hold it in place. So that's the bottom with the purse feet in place. Once again, if you're following along with me, I'm at the bottom of page, I'm going to flip back, page 17. I've inserted my purse feet. And now we're going to attach the straps that we did to the front and back. So this is ready. So now we're really getting into the thick of it. So I'm going to grab either my front or my back. Yours will probably be the same. It doesn't really matter. So it's either the front or the back. Once again, make sure that it's right side up. So I mentioned before that you probably want to draw, write the letter T for top. You know, on here, you'd write the letter T so that you know what the top and the bottom is, especially when you're doing something. You could just quickly flip it over and, you know, oh, that's the top. So if I flip it over, this should be right side up. So this especially works well if you're working on the wrong side of something. You can't necessarily see it and you may say, oh, I got it right, and you didn't get it right. So that's what that is for. So now we're going to place this right side up. Mine is kind of like abstract, so it doesn't really matter if that's my top or that's my top. I think I like it better this way, so I'm going to make that my top. And then what I'm going to do is I need to draw a line from this top edge, because it's going to be the placement line for my actual strap. So let me get a little chalk liner here so that I don't mess up my my material, because I've drawn it on the front. So you can either use a chalk liner or you can use, like I mentioned before, the Frisian markers. So that's a Frisian marker. And I just want to put my little cradle back here that I have. And so I want to make sure that I draw it in something that I can remove later, is really what I'm saying. I don't want to draw it in anything permanent, and then I have a little bit of a problem later on doing it. So let me just make sure this one works. The only thing I find is that these pens, they tend to dry out. I don't know if you can see that. So I will use, this is my little Tandy pen, which is totally fine, or my chalk liner. So I love the little chalk liner because then I can just brush it away. All right. So now I'm going to draw a horizontal line going all the way across. And I'm going to grab my ruler. Like I said, whatever the top is, you need to draw this along the top. So I'm going to just turn it sideways, but it is the top of my piece. And I'm going to use my chalk liner, to draw that line. I'm not going to use the full length, but it just makes it easier for me. because now I have that line. I don't know if you could see that, that line is drawn right on there. So it makes it easier to see. So you can see that line that I drew. And this, I went a little bit off, but that's okay. All right, so once I draw that line, that's going to be the placement for where the bottom of my actual piece is going to go. So as I'm looking at it, and I grab one of my straps. Okay, I need to align my strap with that line. So that's the purpose of drawing the line, so that I could see it. I'm also going to draw a box so that I know exactly where the placement is. So that's also something that I'm going to need to do, because I want to make sure it ends up in the same place, right? So to do that, I need to fold this in half. Remember, I talk about marking the centers. I fold this in half, and I'm going to make a small little snip right there. Make sure I line the ends here. I'm going to make a snip here. You can definitely measure the center if you want. I just find that snipping and getting the center works, just as good. If you're somebody who needs the exact measurement, definitely measure across left and right. Okay. So now I have put a snip here somewhere. Oh, of course, it's on the dark part. It's just so dark. Make sure when you make that cut, it's within your seam allowance. So don't cut it so it's so big that when you put your seam in, you actually have a hole. That's what I mean within the seam allowance. So I have the mark here, and I have the mark here at the bottom. So I know where the center line is. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a line matching down the middle, just a vertical line going straight down like this. Okay, so I want to meet this line here that I drew. And I can see it. I know it's hard for you to see, but I can see it on this side. So there's a line that goes down the center line, and it meets this line that goes across. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm then going to measure to the left and to the right. So I'm going to look at this line here, and I'm going to draw another line to the left. And then I'm going to draw another line over here to the right. And just make sure the line is straight. It's going to matter if your line's not straight. Okay. Okay. So now the two lines here are going to be my two lines that I'm going to use as my placement lines for my straps. So when I place my strap on, the edge of my strap will need to be aligned with that line there, right? So I'm going to get my finished bag so I can show you. So what happens is I'll have a line here. I will lay the strap down so that this right edge is against the line. Make sure your strap, when you bring it around, is straight. Lay it down here, and then it's going to be the left line against that line. And then the distance in here is really what you want to make sure is correct. Okay, so that's all that I'm doing. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to place it here. Now, this is a case where Nancy, who's my friend, told me I can use paper tape. If you have pins, it's not necessarily something you want to pin down because you don't want to put holes in your vinyl. So what I do is I kind of use a combination of both, right? So I don't use pins. I use double-sided tape. And if I can find it, I also use paper tape, which I can't locate right now. So I'll just use double-sided tape. So I'm going to stick a piece of double-sided tape right down the middle here because I need to hold it in place. And you can put as many pieces as you want. I just do a temporary hold because when I get to the sewing machine, I can actually see the lines. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to align the bottom line here with the bottom of this, the side line here with the inside right edge. So there should be a line. Don't put it on this side of the line because the strap will be too close together. So I'm going to put it over here and I'm going to push it down. All right. And I'm going to sew that in place. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my strap is straight. So make sure it's straight. Turn it around. I'm going to add a piece of double-sided tape there, and you can add 1 or 2 pieces. It's up to you. The piece that I'm using is about maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches long, and I'm just laying it in the middle. And once again, I'm putting it against that line. Like I said, when I get to the sewing machine, I can still see the lines. So I'll know if I'm off. You know, as I'm sewing it, I'll know if I'm off. You can, oh, I peeled the tape right off. You can also, and this is, I do recommend that you do this if you don't have the paper tape, like I can't put my hand on mine, put clips at the top to hold it. So I'm going to add 2 clips on either side to hold it for me also. I'm going to do this, put this on the line at the bottom, and then the drawn line should be over here. Okay, and then what I will do is I will take 2 clips. I will put 1 on either side to hold it even firmer for myself. And that should be enough. Like I said, I don't use pins. We don't use pins for vinyl because we don't want to create holes in our vinyl because it's hard, you know, you can't really get them out. I know some people say, oh, turn it over, use steam, but it's a perforation. Okay, and then that's my strap. Now what happens is if you take your ruler, and I will tell you this measurement, take your ruler and measure between your 2 straps. They should be 6 inches apart. So if they're not 6 inches apart, you drew your lines wrong. Come back and try it again. So it's the center line. You're going to go out this way, place it on the outside edge of the line, go this way, place it on the outside edge of the second line, and then you'll have your straps in place. So I hope that makes sense. So now that I've done one, you guys have done that with me. The next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to do the second one, but before I do the second one, I want to explain how these are going to get attached. So what we're going to do is we're going to need to do sort of an X, right? So we're going to do a box that goes all the way around like this and back up. I do that all the way around and back up, and it's probably easier. Let's see if I can show you on the actual bag. If it's easier to show you, it's probably not. Yeah, it's not easy to show you, but you'll see it on this. I do it on the vinyl itself. So I come 1/8 of an inch in from this edge on the vinyl. So you'll see a second row of stitches, and I will go down across the bottom, back up 1/8 of an inch on the vinyl and across. When I get back to the corner, I will then make an X that goes from corner to corner of my box. I will sew back across and then go back up to the other corner. So that's what I do, and then sew across. So I'm making a little X. I mentioned yesterday that if you wanted to, you could actually, instead of doing that X, you can actually put rivets. So if you have rivets and you know how to install them, you can actually put, I would say 2 rivets here and 2 rivets here. And that would be fine to hold this in place. So if you'd prefer to put rivets than to sew them in place, you can do that as well. So I just want to see, I'm just taking a look at this. I actually drew a line. And I'm just trying to see what the depth is of the line because I'm kind of reckless sometimes. Okay. So I'm leaving myself some clearance up here. And I'll show you on the bag itself. When I attach the strap, I need to have clearance here to put this in and top stitch. So when I'm attaching this here like this, I come down about 1.5 inches or up 1.5 inches, and that's where that horizontal line is. If you think for yourself it's too close, you can definitely make your box 1.25 inches or 1 inch. So if you just want to do a 1-inch box, you can do that also. And then what that will mean is that this will fold down further for you. So when you're top stitching, you have more of a clearance. So that's totally up to you. That is your call. So I'm going to draw a line from the bottom. And I'm just going to turn this. The reason I'm turning it sideways is because I have a glare. So I don't want you think I don't want you to see what I'm doing. And I am going to draw a box. So I'm going to take my chalk liner and I'm just going to draw a line this way. And I'm going to draw a line this way. Okay, so now I have this line. So once again, I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch from the vinyl edge, 1/8 of an inch. When I get to that line, I'm going to come across. So I get to about 1/8 of an inch over here, go back down 1/8 of an inch. You should be sewing close to or near that other 1/8 of an inch at the bottom here. So you're going to sew across. When you get back to the corner, and usually what I do is because I start here, I will go back. I may sew up here, come to this corner and then sew down, go back across, come to that corner, go up to this corner, and then back tack. So you just need to do that X in there. Like I said, it's sort of like a figure 8. So I normally start, I start on the edge here and I go up about 1/4 of an inch. I go up, across, and the first thing I do is the box, down, across, back up all the way to the top. Then I come back down, across the bottom, back up at an angle like that. And then if you want, you can come back across this way and back tack. So I can do that for both sides. So what I'm going to do is, in the interest of time, I'm going to do one. I'm then going to attach the sides and the bottom. And then I'm going to leave for homework for you tomorrow night to do the other one and attach the back half of your bag for tomorrow. But once we do this piece, along with the sides and the bottom, it's just a matter of putting the straps on the second piece and then attaching that second piece to the other part of the bag that we did. So you'll see what I mean when I do it. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine and do this right now. I'm hoping I didn't confuse anybody. Okay, so I'm keeping on my Teflon foot, by the way, so you don't really have to change it. And I said this yesterday, you don't, when we sew on cotton, you don't really need to change it. It's totally fine. So I'm going to start along the edge. I don't start at the corners up here, like I mentioned before, because if you start at the corner, it's hard to make it match at the corner. So I'm going to sew down till I get about 1/8 of an inch on the bottom right here. I'm going to sew across that 1/8 of an inch line that I did before and keep going until I'm about 1/8 of an inch from this edge. Sew up till I get to that line. Sew across that line till I get to the opposite side and then come back down. And the two lines will meet, but I'll keep coming down until I get to the corner here. And then that's when I'll make the X. All right. So stitch length is still at 4.5. I haven't changed it. And I'm going to come down. I will back tack maybe once or twice. And then I come down to about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Remember to rotate your hand wheel so your needle is going up. Rotate or pivot 90 degrees. You should be sewing across that other line that you had before. Take your time because there is some thickness here. When I get to about 1/8 of an inch on this side, I will stop. Rotate my hand wheel, pivot 90 degrees again. Oh, I went a little bit too far. I went a little bit too far. That's okay. This is actually the back half of my bag, so it's okay. And then I'm going to sew back up 1/8 of an inch. Now you're going to sew until you get this line right here. Remember the line that we drew till you get to that line. So it's actually on the line, not 1/8 of an inch away. So I'm there. Rotate my wheel so the needle goes up. Rotate this. And I'm going to come across till I'm 1/8 of an inch away from this edge. I'm going to rotate so the wheel goes up. Lift my presser foot. And then I'm going to meet this line here, but I'm going to keep going down. And take your time and try to sew exactly on that line. When you get to the corner here, rotate the wheel. You still want it to go up. But now we're going to sew from this corner here to this outer corner over here that I just sewed. So it's going to be an angular line, not a straight line. It's not going to be a perpendicular line. So I keep my eye on the corner. I don't look at the needle. I keep my eye on the corner to make sure it goes straight. You could have drawn a box, a complete box, if it makes it easier for you. So once I get to that corner and I'm right there, I rotate the wheel so it goes up, lift it, and I'm going to sew back across that line, that chalk line on those stitches. And I'm going to come to this corner right here. So once I'm at that corner, rotate my wheel, lift the presser foot. And then once again, I'm going to come to this outer corner here that I sewed. And I will back tack right here. Okay, so now I've done that. I'm going to turn it over on the back so you can see. That's what it looks like on the back. All right, so that's really what I'm trying to do. So I make the box first and then I sew from corner to corner. I'm going to do the same with the other side. So that's one side done. I have this other side over here to sew. And I'm going to do the same thing. So remember I said I don't start at an end. I start like about a quarter of an inch up, half an inch up, whatever. 1/8 of an inch around the edges. When you get 1/8 of an inch from the bottom, rotate your hand wheel. Then rotate your bag 90 degrees. Sew along that other stitch line that you had at the bottom. Rotate your hand wheel so that it goes up. I'm about 1/8 of an inch away from this edge. And then I'm going to turn it again. I'm now going to stitch up to that chalk line that I drew. Once I'm there, rotate my hand wheel, rotate 90 degrees. I think you're getting the gist of what's happening. And now you're going to go down to the corner, right? So you want to make sure you get into that corner. Rotate, and then I'll clean up my threads. I'm going to come from this corner to this corner. Go back across that line again. And then go down to the bottom corner. And back tack. Okay, so now we've attached that. So you do the same thing for your front or your back, whichever piece you're doing. You would do the same exact thing and attach your strap. So once your strap is attached, you should then have clearance. When you tuck this under, you still have a good amount of clearance here. Okay, so that's one piece. So now we're going to talk about, and you do the same. So you're going to rinse and repeat for the other part. So then you'll have two pieces. So the next step is going to be to attach your side pieces as well as your bottom piece here where you put your purse feet in. So to do that, and I'm just going to fast forward in the directions, you should be on page, I'm skipping the zipper. We're going to attach that tomorrow because that'll be pretty simple to attach after we've done it. I'm now on step 9 with the side pieces, and that's on page 22. Okay. So what I'm going to do with the side pieces, and this is actually pretty easy. I've drawn, or I've folded in half my pieces so that I have right here. I have a little notch on there, and that's my bottom. Then what you're going to do is you're going to draw a little box at the bottom. That little box is actually your seam allowance, but it should also be where the edge of your Decoville heavy falls. So your Decoville heavy falls here. So that's where the little box gets drawn, which is really your seam allowance. The reason you draw the box is because when we're sewing along the bottom, that's going to be the stop point for us. And then we're going to sew across this way. So we're not going to sew all the way to the end. We're going to stop and pivot. And we're basically sewing right along the Decoville heavy with our seam allowance. I hope that that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my pieces, and I'll take the one that has this on it already. I'm going to take my piece, my exterior, front or back, whichever one you did first, right side up. I'm then going to take this piece with the boxes that are marked at the bottom, and I'm going to align the bottom. Okay. I am on step 13 on page 22. I'm then going to clip that in place. And you're going to see why I don't go all the way to the end in a minute. I don't cut it out, I just mark it. Okay. I'm going to do the same with the other side. So I take my other side piece, so I do it at the same time. I'm going to put this right here, align the bottom, the side and the bottom, and I'm going to place clips. So I'm clipping it in place. Now, for those of you who want to make sure everything's right, you would measure from this edge to the top over here, and from this edge, the top edge, from the top edge to the top of here, and make sure they're the same distance, right? So mine is the same distance. I cut it just the way it's supposed to be, but you would measure them to make sure. And if you're keeping track, it's actually 2¼ inches from the top. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew these in. Once again, I have marked right there purposely. So I'm going to sew from there all the way to this top here. And I'm going to back tack at the start and the stop. When I come to put in the bottom piece, and which is this piece here, remember we also have the Decoville heavy. This is going to go in at the bottom. I will be able to fold this up and then be able to lay this in just like that and then match it. So really what's happening is it'll be sewn, but it's sewing and pivoting around here. It's not sewing to the edge. It just makes it easier to put this piece in when it's done if you don't sew all the way to the edge and you leave the seam allowance. It will get caught once I come back across the bottom here and I'm attaching this. So you'll see what I mean. But let's go in and sew these side pieces. Just start here, back tack, and sew all the way up and back tack to the top. I am leaving the stitch length the same because it's vinyl and vinyl needs a longer stitch length. If you put the stitch length too small, like if you make it 3 or 2.5 or something, it creates a little perforation. And you have to think of it like being perforated paper, right? So paper in a notebook that's perforated, that's easily ripped. So think of it that way. So the closer the holes are together, the easier it is to rip, which is why we increase the stitch length. So I'm going to start right there on that mark that I made. I'm going to lower my presser foot. And I'm going to sew right along there all the way to the top, and I'm going to back tack. Okay, so that's one side, and then I'm going to do the same on the opposite side. On this side, I'm just going to start at the top and go down. When I get to the bottom, I'm going to stop, right? So remember, you're going to stop at the mark, and there should be a little bit of an opening, and I'll show you that when I go back to the cutting surface. Okay. So here goes show you here. Can you see that there's that piece right there that opens? That's what you want. And you want it on both edges. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm just going to press this back a little bit with my fingers. So I'm just going to press it open just like that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our bottom piece, right? So this is the bottom piece. I did cut a notch here and here. Remember I said I use that to align the centers, and I can align the centers at this point. So I start from the center and I work out. I can then see if I fold this back, I don't know if you can see, you can match the corner here, but it also matches the corner over there, right? But here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the bottom. I'm going to put a clip here. I'm going to stop right where that stitch is. So I'm going to sew across, stop where I started, and not sew any further. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the cutting surface. I'm going to rotate this like this, right? The bottom like that, match my center with the bottom. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. And I'm going to stop right here in the corner. So this piece will be, this little tiny piece over here will be totally unsewn. And that's intentional, and that gives you a better corner. But definitely match the corners, match the fabric over here on the end, make sure they match when you're sewing, but don't sew all the way to the end. So I'm going to do that here, and I'm going to do that on this side as well. So I'm just going to open this up. And I normally place about 5 clips. So I do one in the middle, one on either end, and then halfway between the middle and the end. So that's usually the way I sew things like this together. So you should be able to peel this back. If you can't peel it back, you sewed too far. Okay, and you don't want to catch this other piece. You just want to clip it. And this will be done in pieces. So if you get this piece, when you do the homework, you'll get the other piece, right? So we're going to sew from where I stopped all the way across, or where I stopped at the side piece, back tack all the way across to where I stopped here on the other side piece and back tack. So let's go to the sewing machine and do that. Okay, so I'm just going to do this. I am still using my Teflon foot, and I am still doing it the same. I am still using the same stitch length. So I'm just going to wiggle that under there a little bit better. Good. And then I'm going to stitch. Now I do have my purse feet here. So be aware of that when you feel it, you will feel your purse feet. So make sure it's flat. And back tack. I just want to make sure I'm right in that stitch. There we go. Okay. And then you will back tack. So I'm going forward and I'm going to back tack. And I'm going to come to this end. I just want to tuck this little piece out of the way. And I am going to come and I am going to meet this little stitch right here in the corner. Okay. So now let's go back to our mat and take a look at what we did. All right. So now that I've sewn that in place, you should see that there's like a little opening here. I don't know if you could see that. So now what I can do is I can flip this piece up. It only goes as far as there, and it only goes as far as there. But it makes it easier to flip it up, and it makes that little peak right there. And then I can match my centers, my center mark right there. Match my center mark right here. So I match the end, center mark. When I'm sewing this, I'm not going to go to the end because remember, I have to sew on the back piece, which is your homework. So I'm going to go right to here, which is the edge of my Decoville heavy. I'm going to stop there and back tack. So I'm going to go across. when I get to this little corner piece here, I'm going to back tack and I'm going to stop. As long as you keep getting in this spot right here, you will not get a hole in that corner. You won't get a hole. And I'll show you if I did it right. It's like magic, right? So let's do the same on the other side so I could do it all at the same time at the sewing machine. Now I'm going to show you what I'm doing here because this is also going to help you at the sewing machine so you're not struggling. Okay. So hopefully you can see. Can you see how that's pushed in like that? I'm actually putting it flat. It doesn't matter because I'm not stitching to the end. So I should not catch this. The only thing I'm going to catch is that stitch right there where I stopped. That's the only thing I'm going to catch. So I'm going to go across this way. Back tack, remember to leave your seam allowance. So you should have marked it for your seam allowance. But it's really at the edge of the decal real heavy. And you're going to do the same here. And it's okay if it's tucked in. Just lay it flat. That's why I pinched it so I could lay it flat and stitch it. So I'm going to do that at the sewing machine. And you can decide if you want to do it from the top, the bottom. Sometimes I do it awkwardly in here because I have a camera. And so I have to work my way around the camera that's right here. So sometimes you'll see me do it a little bit differently than maybe it was in the directions, because when I wrote the directions, I didn't have the camera so I could put the bag anywhere I wanted. So here I go. I'm starting at that corner. I'm just going to sink my needle down to make sure I'm in the right place. And I'm going to sew. Take your time. Back tack. And I actually count the stitches. So if I go 3 forward, I go 3 back. I actually count them. And remember, you're going to stop when you get to the end here, right? Because we have to add the other piece. Okay. So I didn't go all the way to the end. So right here, see if I can show you, it's open. See that? So I didn't go to the end because I don't have to do the back piece. So now I'm going to do the opposite corner. Oops. Sorry about that. See that camera moving around? Okay, and I'm going to, this one's a little bit easier. I can see it right there. I'm going to put my needle in the down position and I'm going to sew across. Back tack. And remember to stop on this side as well. Okay, so we are done. Let's go back here to our cutting mat. Whew. Okay, so let me zoom out because then I want you to be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. So you don't go, what is she talking about? I can't see any of that. So if I zoom out, you'll be able to see it. Okay. A little bit too much, huh? Okay, let's, it looked perfect on my side. Hold on, let me just get this down a little bit for you. Don't know why I did that, but okay. Okay, so hopefully that's a little bit better on the so you can see it. Once you see the whole bag. So over here is still open because I haven't attached that back piece. You're going to come back and you're going to attach the back piece once you've done the straps. I won't, it's the same thing, so I don't want to keep you to do that. But take a look here. Can you see how this goes up, meets at the corner, and goes across? That's what I was doing. So it does the same thing in here as well. It meets at the corner. You can actually trim these to about 1/4 inch. So if you wanted to fold this back like this, now that you're here, you can trim each one of these pieces back at a 45-degree angle to about 1/4 inch. I'm going to turn it right side out first. And I always recommend before you trim anything, turn it right side out and take a look at it to make sure that you don't have any holes. And if you did it the way that I was talking about, you shouldn't have any holes in those corners. So, oh, my bobbin thread must have run out over here. So I've got me works to do. And it is stiff. You can hit this with a blow dryer to make it soft again. And I'm just going to push this right out. I actually have to come back in. I have to be careful not to rip those stitches. But you can do this. And you can see when I push it out over here in the corner, I don't have a hole. Right? But I do have, if I fold this like that, I do have a very nice, right there, very nice corner. And it's the same over here. I'm going to have to, my homework is going to be to check my bobbin thread. So I'm just going to reverse this out here, just like that. And I apologize if I was off camera. It's using my body. And so now I see there's no hole. I can go back in and I can trim it. But that's what it should look like when you're done. Just make sure you get right in there, in those corners, in the stitches. And then what happens is if you fold it, because your seam allowance is right where you're interfacing it, it should actually fold very nicely and give you a nice crisp fold. And that's along all of these edges, right? So it should fold right nicely where that is. And you can see how the Decoville Heavy, along with that stiff interfacing, gives you a nice boxy bag, right? So I'm just sitting it right on the table right there. But that's what it looks like, the tote. And then we're going to attach the other side. And then tomorrow we'll do the lining and the top zipper portion. So for homework tonight or tomorrow sometime, attach the back so then you're ready when we do the lining portion of it. Okay? So that was a step-by-step for the exterior. I did review with you earlier today a little bit of the prep. So if anybody's just joining in, go back, watch it on replay, look at the prep portion of it, because I did explain a little bit about fusing down that Decoville Heavy along with the one, the interfacing on the top. When we start tomorrow, we will be starting at the top of page 25. Okay, so it's been a pleasure sewing this with you. I'm kind of sad. I have mixed feelings about this bag, only because this is the last live sew along for 2023. So tomorrow it will be the last time that you see me live until next year, which isn't too far away, right? But I've enjoyed so far sewing this bag with you, and I appreciate each of you coming and joining me tonight on part 2 of the sew along of the Iwalola. I got to say that's a big tongue twister, which means creativity tote. So I will see you on day 3. Remember to do your homework, which is the second part of the bag, and make sure all your pieces are interfaced so that we can knock out that lining. Have a good night, everybody, and I'll see you for part 3.